I sat in her office looking at the report. There's no doubt about it, Julianne is cheating on me, and has been for quite some time. My suspicions arose that evening when she was drunk. Julianne doesn't drink often, but we went to the neighbor's house for a party they were throwing for their son, who had returned from the Navy. Ben and his girlfriend had a great time at the party. We had a few drinks, but neither of us was completely drunk. When we got home, I was feeling pretty excited. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth and do my nightly chores, and by the time I came out, I was ready for bed. Julianne had fallen asleep still fully dressed and only half lying on the bed. I went back to the bedroom and, seeing her so vulnerable, I ran my hand down her leg, hoping to wake her up and get some sex. She was only half awake and moaned, "Please, Ben." She muttered, "No more. My name is Steve, Ben." Is the guy she works with, who had dinner at my house, whose wife I know, and who we went on vacation with, suddenly completely sober? I thought all night, isn't this just a Freudian blunder? Maybe she's fantasizing about her coworker, or maybe they're actually doing something more than just working together. I thought about asking her about it the next day, but I knew that she would either laugh at me or get really angry. Juliana is a scary sight when she's angry, but I need to know. I'd love to say that I'm the kind of man who could get his hands on surveillance equipment or order something from Amazon. I could tap her phone and purse, but that's not me. From what I've read online, most of these things you can buy on Amazon don't actually work. I'm also not one of those people who has enough money to spend on private detectives. I'm doing okay though. The house is pretty nice, and I'm on top of my game. I've been paying all my bills, but I don't have thousands of dollars lying around. I work as an accountant for a small healthcare IT company. I handle payroll and expenses, which isn't the most exciting job in the world, but it pays the bills, or at least my half of them. Julianne also works at a local advertising agency. She creates copy for both online and radio advertising campaigns. She hasn't yet managed to make her way onto television, but she earns a little more than I do. We saved money together until we got to the point where she could take enough time off to have our first child. We've been saving money throughout our 4-year relationship. 6 years into our marriage, we still enjoy amazing sex. I've heard of couples having sex once or twice a week or less, always on the same day every week and always in the same way. But we're much more spontaneous. It's extremely rare for either of us to reject the other's proposal, no matter when or where. In fact, I'd say she probably proposes to me more than I propose to her. We make love on average. We have sex 4 times a week, and there isn't a single place in the house where we don't have sex. This includes a garage, an attic, and even once crawling under the floor. I can't say that anything has changed in our relationship. We still have sex as many times and as spontaneously as before. I hope that she just said the wrong name. She works with Ben every day and is used to calling him by his name. It was already 4 a.m. and I was still wide awake. My mind was racing with thoughts and actions. How could I find out if she was cheating? What should I do if she was? I imagined scenarios where I found her in the arms of her lover. I considered how I would react in each case. I just say goodbye to her and walk away in dignified silence. I get into the car and never see either of them again. But before all this happens, I need to know if she is cheating. I got up out of bed and walked into the living room, where she'd dropped her purse when we were returning from the party. I looked through it but didn't find anything. I don't know what I was expecting to find. I thought I might find condoms or love letters, but there was nothing like that. Her phone was locked, but that wasn't a problem. I watched her unblock it several times, so I entered the number and looked through the calls and texts. There were calls and also text messages to Ben. I read them, but they were all work-related. I looked at every single one, of course, but I had no idea about the contents of this. There's still no evidence that she did anything wrong. I was just about to put her phone back in her purse when it slipped through my fingers and fell to the floor. I thought I might have broken it, but I picked it up and carefully inspected it for cracks or chips. There were none, so I turned it over and saw that something had slipped between the phone cover and the camera lens. I noticed something strange on the phone cover and the camera lens. It was like a credit card. I unsnapped the phone's cover and saw that it was, in fact, a credit card. It also had her maiden name on it, and I didn't know anything about her since I'm an accountant. I'm responsible for the family's finances, but I don't manage the money. I just fill out all the forms, pay all the bills, including credit card bills, and file. I was confused about why she still had that credit card. Looking at her phone again, I found the app from the credit card provider, hidden in a folder marked Spam. It was filled with all the apps that come with the phone and which are impossible to get rid of. I opened the app and found I saw that a password was needed. Luckily, or maybe not so much, Juliana had set it up for fingerprint authentication, so I carefully crept back into the bedroom and, with the utmost care, placed her finger on the screen. She didn't move, and the application opened. I was nervous that she might wake up, even though she seemed so out of it. I sent all the transcripts she had to the printer in my office. Once I'd got the confirmation, I closed the app, put the card back where I'd found it, and put her phone back in the case, which I put in her purse. I looked into the bedroom again and went down to my office to get the statements from the printer. Everything was there. Transactions took place twice a week, on Monday and Thursday, usually around 3. At 4 p.m., she made a $45 reservation at a motel chain. The name of the network and the branch number were provided. After doing some research online, I found that the motel was only 6 blocks from her office. This made me think that she might be visiting the motel twice a week, even though I was already aware of the reason why. Perhaps they have conference rooms there, and she receives clients there. I laughed at myself, realizing that I was trying to come up with reasons that didn't seem very likely. However, I still wouldn't have believed it until I saw it with my own eyes. When I looked back at the reports, I found that these visits a month or so ago, I suddenly started feeling sick. I made it to the toilet just in time to vomit. I was kneeling on the floor, spitting into the basin, when Julianne came in and asked Pat if she'd had too much to drink. She said she'd get me something. I shook my head. I was still holding the papers to my chest, hoping she wouldn't see them. "I just need some time," I said. "Go back to bed. I'll be there in a minute." She was still tired, so she leaned down again and kissed the back of my head. I hit my forehead on the toilet seat as I pulled away from her, but she didn't seem to notice. I stayed in the bathroom for another 15 minutes until the nausea passed. Then I went back to my office and hid the statements among other papers. I knew there was no way Juliana would accidentally find them. She almost never comes into my office, so I didn't think she'd find them there. I went back to my office, although I have had her leaning over my desk more than once, as far as I know. She never comes there when I'm not at home. But what do I know? As far as I know, she's faithful and a devoted wife. I went back to the living room, but I couldn't bring myself to go to the bedroom. Instead, I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall. I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall, thinking. Thoughts continued to swirl in my head. Only the most stubborn parts of me still tried to cling to the fiction that she wasn't having an affair. But I still wasn't quite ready to accept the reality. I still wanted more proof. I wanted to be completely sure. I wanted to know what I would do if this was true. I know Ben. He's a friendly guy. He served in the Air Force, about 15 centimeters taller than me. I have no doubt he could beat me at anything if he wanted to. I will really like his wife, Mary. She is a happy woman, always seeming to smile. They have 3 children. Year-old Tabitha is great. She calls me Uncle Stay and has done so since I've known her. If we got a divorce, we'd both lose the house, which would have to be sold and the proceeds divided. We each have our own retirement accounts, and hers is a little larger than mine since she earns more. I don't have any children, so I could end up in a pretty good position if we got divorced. I didn't think the court would give me alimony, but I was sure they wouldn't give it to her either. From a financial perspective, the only people who benefit in divorce are the lawyers. I decided to look online to see how easy it is to get a divorce on your own. If Julianne doesn't put up a fight, it might come out of this fairly unscathed, at least financially. Is this what I want? No, I don't think so. I love Juliana with everything I have, but I can't stay with someone who didn't love me back. I'd even take a bullet for her. That's how much I love her. I doubt, however, that this is also true in the other direction. She takes something, but they don't shoot her with bullets. I felt another wave of nausea, but it went away after a couple of deep breaths. I decided to look online about I got a bit of sleep and then woke up. Julianne gave me a glass of water and a couple of Tylenol tablets. "How are you feeling?" she asked, looking worried. I must look terrible. Looking at the clock, I realized that I had slept for about 3 hours. My head is pounding, and my neck and back are. I was in a weird position on the couch, and I just found out my wife is cheating on me. I feel better now, I said. She smiled sympathetically. Both you and me. She told me to take a shower and said I'd feel better after. I didn't think so, but I took the pills and water and went to the bedroom. I threw my clothes on the floor and got into the shower. I could have put my clothes in the basket. Juliana was complaining as she went into the bathroom and picked up the clothes I had discarded. You could have kept your legs closed, I muttered in response. Pardon me, she said. I'm sorry, I said loud enough for her to hear through the shower. I was going to collect it when I got out. It's okay, she said. I did it. Don't forget, we're going to Ben and Mary's for dinner later. I forgot. I was actually looking forward to it. Mary cooks amazingly and serves Michelin-level food. We have gotten into the habit of visiting them once every 2 months, and they come to us the next month. Julianne is a great cook and does a fantastic job in the kitchen, but I always prefer to go to them. Today, though, I really didn't feel like going. I don't feel very well, I said. I think I might have caught something. She said, You'll feel fine once the pills start working. I'll be really disappointed if she doesn't get to see her uncle. We spent most of the day as we usually do on a Saturday, once or twice. I saw a look in Julianne's eyes that said she was horny and trying to provoke me into sex. Each time I tended not to notice and moved on to something else. I don't know if I've been playing the I don't feel good card all day. It seems to suit her. I'm not sure that even if I tried to have sex with her I would be able to. I have a terrible feeling that I'm either going to throw up on her or I just can't handle it. I see Ben having I couldn't get it up with her, and it was making me feel pretty low. I spent most of the evening at Ben and Mary's, feeling pretty down. Tabitha came and climbed onto my lap, which was her thing when I was visiting them, and I gave her a hug as soon as it was reasonable. I made her get down again, saying I didn't want her to get sick too. I was down again, citing the fact that I was sick and didn't want her to get sick too. Juliana said, You're not sick, you still feel sick. I said, I'm not drunk either. Ben looked at me with concern on his face. He said, Do you need Tylenol or something? I had an almost uncontrollable urge to punch him. I suddenly felt the urge to punch him in the face. Then I saw him and Juliana again. I made it to their bathroom just in time to throw up again. Juliana stroked my back and said, Oh, baby. Maybe you're sick. Would you like me to call the doctor? I shook my head. They'll just tell me to drink water and call them in 3 days if I don't get better. I said, Just say it's a virus. They'll tell me to drink water and call them in 3 days if I don't get better. Come on, she said caringly. Let's take you home. I heard her thank Ben and Mary for the food when she said to Ben, See you on Monday. I vomited again. Luckily, I had already emptied my stomach. I spent Sunday in bed, which was a good excuse to avoid Julianne. I went into the guest room, ostensibly so that if it was a virus, I wouldn't infect her, and also so as not to keep her up all night in any case. I slept for a good part of the day, but my dreams were tormented. I was really unsettled. I lost count of how many times I woke up in a cold sweat. I think I must have been dreaming about Ben and Julianne having sex. How are you feeling? Julianne asked. It was Monday morning, and I was already up and dressed for work. We usually got up at the same time and we left at almost the same time. Our offices are located approximately the same distance from our house, but in different directions. I was a little tired, so I said, I think I survived it. Why don't you take the day off? She said, Make sure I can't. I nodded, and then leaned over to kiss my cheek. I tried to play it cool, and managed to pull away just in time. Let me know if you need anything, she said. See you tonight, I replied. We both got into our cars and drove off in different directions. I drove 1 block, turned the corner and stopped. I called my boss and said I was sick and might not be in for a few days. He said if I wasn't back after Wednesday, to call again. I said I would and hung up. He drove up to his office and turned off the location service on his phone. I didn't think Julianne would check on me, but if she did, I drove to my workplace and parked up. I left the car in sight and went into a cafe on the next street. I brought my laptop and sat by the window, as if I was doing some work. I ordered coffee and a Danish pastry. I suddenly felt hungry. After 12, I saw Julianne's car leaving her company's car park. I'm sure she can't see me through the coffee shop window. I didn't run out into the street, having a good idea of where she was going, plus Ben's car is still in the car park. I didn't want to run into him. Then a thought occurred to me. I figured it was him she was meeting at the motel, mainly because she said his name. What if it's not him? What if it was just an innocent mistake and I accidentally stumbled upon her affair with someone else? I was about to leave the cafe when I saw Ben's car. I was driving in the same direction as Juliana when I had a thought. Is it better or worse that she's cheating with him? I left the cafe and went to the motel. Now I have a problem. I saw Juliana's car in the car park, but it's parked outside the motel office. Ben's car is parked in front of one. I hoped they were in this room, otherwise I'd have to look through all the windows in the motel. I thought I might be arrested. I went to the room and saw that it was one of the few with closed curtains, which was a good sign. At least it meant I'd found the right room. I don't think good is the right word to describe the number. The front of the motel is in the shade, which was lucky because if the sun were shining through the window, my shadow would be visible even through the curtains. I walked to the block and just sat down on the floor under the window since Ben's car was parked in front of the block, so I wasn't visible to anyone on the path. I listened and heard someone talking, a man and a woman. I couldn't identify their voices or hear what they were saying. I turned on my phone camera and raised it over the window. There was still a gap of about half a centimeter between the bottom of the curtains and the curtain rod. This is a cheap motel. I was able to look into the room where I saw Julianne sitting on the bed and Ben standing in front of her. All doubts were dispelled over the next 10 minutes as I watched and recorded the beginning of their sex session. I saw enough to know I couldn't make a porn film. I collected evidence and played the video, which I now have on my phone. The images weren't bad. I wanted to be sure that both parties could be identified, so I set the camera to maximum quality and took a dozen photos. I enlarged the images of faces. There could be no doubt who was there and what they were doing. I crawled away from the window on my hands and knees. I again had thoughts of doing something with his car or with hers, but there was no point. I just needed to get home and get things. I moved out at 4 p.m. and got home at 2:30 a.m. I filled out and filed the divorce papers, printing out a copy for Juliana. Her signature was required, but if she refuses, I'll have to hire someone to serve her and go to court. If she signs, we can get a divorce in just 60 days. I paid off and canceled our shared credit cards. I opened a bank account in my name and transferred exactly half of the balance of our joint account into it. I created a report on our finances listing all of our assets, including our house, retirement accounts, and savings. I also took half of everything. I'd gone through every last thing, but I couldn't take anything with me. This is my home, and I wasn't leaving until I had to. I couldn't afford to stay in a motel or hotel for long. I still needed somewhere to live until this was all over. I moved all my stuff into the guest room, clearing. I downloaded the video file and photos onto my laptop and printed out pictures from both the video and photos. I also scanned all my credit card receipts. I wrote a letter to Mary stating what I had found and enclosing all my evidence. The flight was scheduled for 6. I wanted to give myself a chance to talk to Juliana before Mary found out. She'll obviously tell Ben, who will of course call Julianne. Unfortunately, it was still only 4. It was 4 in the afternoon and Julianne wouldn't be home for another hour. I wondered what Ben would do when Mary attacked him. I even thought that he might break in and attack me. I went to the garage and searched until I found what I needed. I've had this baseball bat since I was a teenager. It was a gift from my father, along with a ball, a glove that seemed to have just been inhabited by a family of spiders, and a ball. I took the bat, cleaned it, and put it away. I took it into the house and put it against the wall behind the sofa, close enough to the hand but not immediately visible. I hoped I wouldn't need it this time. Juliana arrived early. She came in smiling and said, "Hi, honey, how are you feeling?" She looked at my face and the stack of papers in front of me, but none of them were visible to her. "Is there something wrong?" she asked. "You could say that," I replied. I have something to Julianne threw her purse on the floor and sat down opposite me on the sofa. I handed her the divorce papers. She looked puzzled at first, but then her eyes widened. "What is this?" she asked. "It's written here right at the top." "I don't understand," she said. "Why do you want a divorce?" "I don't know," I said. "Where were you today, Julianne?" "At work." "You know, all day." So you didn't go out at all today? Steve, she said. You didn't go out at all today. What's up? I gave her the credit card statements, so today was different from the last 4 Mondays and Thursdays when you went to the motel. Where did you get them? She asked, her expression showing a mixture of fear and anger. Does it matter? I asked. Were you spying? She accused. How could you? I asked, with slight contempt in my voice. Do you go there? How could I? For the last month, you've been sneaking out. Steve, I know you've been going to the motel twice a week, but I promise you it's not like that. I had meetings with clients there, but there are no conference rooms. I checked, and they rent out their rooms for meetings. She said it's much cheaper than using the conference center. But what happens at these meetings? I asked. Her feet, how dare you, she almost shouted at me. Do you think I sell myself to clients for the sake of business? No, I answered calmly. I think you're having sex with Ben. That's what I think. This stopped her. She sat down again. Steve, she said, no, I would never do such a thing. I love you. I don't know what you think. But you got it all wrong. I have meetings with clients. In these meetings, we do nothing other than professional business. At the motel, I asked, which one are you paying for on a credit card that I don't know anything about? I keep it separate because it's easier, she explained. The company pays the bill. Otherwise, we would have to pay tax on that too. That wasn't true, but I wasn't going to explain tax law to her at the moment. I shook my head. So today, I said, when your car was in the motel parking lot, you were there with clients at a business meeting. My car. I was driving past the motel and I saw your car. She said it was a business meeting and I take it Ben was there too. I said because his car was also in the parking lot. She said, look, I know what it's like, but we were just having a business meeting there. She swore there was nothing between Ben and her. She said, I love you. I would never cheat on you. I handed her a stack of photographs. She turned white and raised her hand to her mouth. Then I played a 10. I recorded a short video on my phone and set it up to stream to my TV. The camera was a little shaky, but it was clear who was there and what was going on. I wanted to know where the clients were at that moment. She started crying and shaking her head, no, no, no. She said, this cannot be. He promised this could not happen. It's over. We're finished. Sign the papers. We'll put the house up for sale. In 2 months, everything will be ready. Then you can go and date whoever you want. I'll go and hide in a corner and try to regain some dignity. She promised everything would be fine with us. I looked at her, puzzled. Who promised? I asked Ben. He said, you'll never know. If you do, you love me, so we'll be fine. Why? Does he think I asked why? I thought you loved me as much as I loved you. Why did you do this to me? And even more, why did you expect anything other than what would happen if and when I found out? Juliana sat down, put her face in her hands and began to cry. I felt so sad to see her in this state. I couldn't offer her anything. I couldn't console the woman who took and trampled. I have to admit that I enjoyed seeing her in pain. I felt a kind of kinship with her, sharing at least some of the heartbreak she was going through. But it broke my heart even more to see her suffering. I heard my laptop beep. My letter had been sent. I asked myself, why did you do that, Julianne? What have I done to deserve this? Was I bad in bed? Did I ignore you? She shook her head, still sobbing. It was only. She said it was supposed to happen only once, but why even once? I screwed up, she said, still sobbing at work. I almost lost a major client. Ben managed to work things out, but if my bosses had found out, they would have fired me. We'll survive, of course, but we won't be able to afford a house if I lose my job. We saved money to afford having children and would have lost it all. There was even a possibility that the client could sue me. The price of Ben's help was that I had to sleep with him. It was only meant to be one time, one day, and that's it. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. If he had shown my bosses what I had done, I would have been fired, and we would have lost everything. There was a chance the client might sue me for the price of Ben's help. She said I had to sleep with him, but it was only meant to be one time. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. If he had shown my bosses what I had done, I would have been fired and we would have lost everything. Why didn't you come to me? I asked. Even if it meant selling the house, we could manage. I couldn't. She said there was no time. I didn't have time. I had to make a decision and give him an answer right away. I was so confused and upset. I saw a way out. I convinced myself that it wouldn't hurt, you'd never know, and we'd be back on an even keel. Even if I believed you, I said. You met with him twice a week for a month. Why keep coming back? He blackmailed me. She said it was the first time he made a video. I didn't know there were cameras in the room. He said that if I don't continue seeing him, he will show the video to you. What about Mary? She knew. She shook her head. So he has as much to lose as you do. If this comes out, I said, you expect me to believe that he would risk his own marriage to blackmail you? It is pointless. I'm sorry, Julianne, but I don't believe you. You voluntarily you were having a good time in that motel room, and from what I saw on the screen, it looked like you were enjoying yourself. Now you're saying he blackmailed you. I don't believe that, but it's true. She said, I had no choice. There is always a choice. I said, if you loved me, you would trust me and come to me. Even if I made a snap decision the first time, you could come to me later and tell me. I would be hurt, but I would understand. I was angry, but I thought I could understand. I would do anything for you, Julianne. I would trust you again, even though you've hurt me. I would love you again. Please, she said, sobbing harder. Give me a chance. Let me prove to you that I love you. It was too late. There was nothing you could say or do to make me believe that you loved me or ever loved me. There was a crash, and our front door almost Ben stood in the doorway and looked at me. You little brat, he growled. Someone look in the mirror. He reached behind his back and pulled out a gun, pointing it at me. You are a little, he shouted, and pulled the trigger. I still don't know what happened next. I heard Julianne scream and saw her jump up. She didn't go towards him trying to get a gun. Her goal was to get between Ben and me. I heard a shot and saw the bullet hit her in the chest. She dropped like a sack. Of Ben's eyes widened as he saw her fall, and he knelt down next to her. He barely had time to look up before the baseball bat I pulled out from behind the sofa hit him on the head. I went to the hospital with Juliana. She was unconscious, and the bullet had hit her just right of center, so she'd lost a lot of blood. I sat in the back of the ambulance and held her blood-soaked hand when we arrived at the hospital. They took her out, and everything happened really quickly. I was taken to the reception desk, where I had to give them our insurance details. By the time they'd finished the paperwork, she'd already been taken to the operating room. I sat in the waiting room, looking at the floor, my hands and my wedding ring, which was stained with Julianne's blood. I'd take a bullet for her. A thought flashed through my mind. I remembered thinking that way when I first suspected her of cheating. It was a sign of how much I loved her that I was willing to risk my life for her, instead of her risking hers for me. The scene played out in my mind again. She knew there was no way to get to Ben to take the gun. Her motive was to put herself between him and me. We all knew he would shoot. She was ready to sacrifice her life to save mine. My life, Uncle St. Tabitha shouted as I entered the house that had been Ben's house 3 months ago. Ben was in jail awaiting trial because of my blow to the head. He was in hospital for a week, but was released under police supervision. He faced a long prison sentence when I entered the kitchen. Mary raised her head, smiled at me, then came over. After lunch, I gave my testimony for the prosecutors, who will be prosecuting Ben's case. They were pretty unscrupulous. They figured the defense would be nasty and tried to get me to say something that would benefit their client. I was determined not to do this. Was this the last time a voice came from behind me? I turned and smiled at Juliana. I think they told me that they have everything they're going to charge him with. Attempted murder, not just assault with a deadly weapon. I walked over to where she was sitting at the kitchen table. She bowed her head, and I kissed her. Juliana's path has been difficult. She spent a month in the intensive care unit and another month in the respiratory ward. Even now, she can't fully take care of herself on the respiratory ward of the hospital. So I left her with Mary while I went to the lawyers. Mary has been a godsend. She looks after Juliana when I have to run errands or work. I managed to convince my boss to let me work from home most of the time, so I'm with her all the time, but sometimes I needed to get away from it all. On those days, Mary and Tabitha come to our house, or I bring Juliana here. It took me almost a full month while Julianne was unconscious on the ventilator to decide what to do. Mary found a recording on Ben's phone of his first meeting with Juliana. When she showed it to me, I wanted to go and hit Ben's head with a baseball bat again. There were 2 files on his phone. One was about 10 minutes long and showed Ben and Julianne having sex. The other was much longer and showed her crying and begging him not to do it. It was clear from the second file that she was being forced, just as it was from the first that she was there voluntarily. It was cleverly edited, so we don't know exactly what Julianne said, but at least about the first file was the truth. And given the edited one, we can assume she was telling the truth about other cases too. But when it came to evidence, the first file was the basis for this case. The moment Juliana threw herself in front of bullets for me, it was like I was showing her how much I love her. I couldn't ignore it. That night I told her I believed her, I loved her, and that if she woke up, we could be together again. I like to think that was the turning point. Until then, the doctors weren't sure if she'd survive. I like to think that I gave her a reason to live. Just as she saved my life, I saved hers.